Hey everyone, it's been a little while since I've done a little garden tour, so I thought today that I would show you some of the things that I got going on and show you how bad I am at weeding. My garden is definitely not weeded. We've had beautiful sunny weather most of this summer, and just in the last week and a half it's gotten cloudy and a little bit less beautiful, so to speak. You can see behind me it's fairly cloudy, but it's promoted a lot of weed growth that I've gotten behind. But anyway, I'm going to show you what I got, because everything, not just the weeds are growing great, but everything is growing great. So I'm going to start with my greenhouse, and I'll show you that, and we'll see where we go from there. I have my daughter's little puppy. We'll see if he'll come with me or if he helps at all. Anyway, we'll see what happens. Okay, so my tomatoes, the plants look really great. I guess I feel like they do. I think I need to fertilize them again. The only thing is the tomatoes are like, some of them are weird shaped, splitting. But I don't know what the deal is with that. Here's the puppy. He's gonna come help. So if anybody has any suggestions, but we have a lot of tomatoes, we have a lot of blossoms. The tomatoes are doing good. The cucumbers, on the other hand, I'm not sure. I watered these with the hose, and now they have this like powdery mold on them. I moved them away from my tomatoes because I wasn't sure what to do about it. If anybody has any suggestions, yes, hello. I would love some suggestions as to what this is and what I need to do. I don't know if I should be like removing leaves that are covered in it, if it's going to hurt my plants or if it's going to be okay. I'm not sure. So anyway, any suggestions would be great. I would love it. But that's my greenhouse. I'm excited for the tomatoes. We'll go on to the rest of the garden. All right, as you can see, like, the willows have grown up, the grass has grown up. We've talked about getting a mower that we can mow around the perimeter of our garden with. But in my my rhubarb, I need to come and get the blossoms back off. But the rhubarb is obviously growing super great. But it does. It loves the spot, it loves the heat, it loves the sun, it loves the water it gets from the garden and the fertilizer every year. So I'm happy with my rhubarb. My potatoes, I have 1.5 rows left to weed. And like I told you at the beginning of the summer, I don't weed the entirety of the potatoes. I just weed kind of up around the plants and then just leave it for the summer, because the potatoes tend to get big enough that they kind of almost drown out the weeds. They grow tall enough that it's not a big deal. And you can see that they're blossoming. There's some pretty tall plants. I'm hoping that the potatoes underneath are as big as the plants on top. But they're doing really well. So the potatoes are doing great. Let me walk down here. It's funny, the ones on the ends don't get as tall as the ones in the middle. I don't know what the deal is with that, and you can see here, so the weeds they're not actually around the plants here. They're just down through the center, because I weeded down, but they are drowned out by the potatoes. The potatoes are doing fine. So what I do need to weed is my onions. I found it interesting. The onions, these are the bulbs that I planted. They're doing really, really well. And these are the little, the seeds I planted. Hi. And they are not doing quite as well. I mean, they're growing. You can see them. Dogs running through the yard. But they're just, I would go with the bulbs next time. My beets, I've never been successful growing beets. I'm still not. They've already gone to seed. And as you can see, they're not, I don't know, the bottom's not very good. The seeds are on the top. Anyway, we need to do, I guess I could use something like that. But they tend to get woody when they go to seed. So, I don't know. We'll keep working on that. The carrots are beautiful and big. The carrots actually started out, they kind of, oh, that's mine. She wants to beat. And she's sitting on my carrots. Anyway, the carrots started out, they just did not grow and did not grow. It was really kind of weird, even after I weeded them. And then it started cooling off the last week or two, the last 5 or 6 days. And all of a sudden, thanks. all of a sudden they just sprouted and they grew really good. She really wants this peat. Anyway, so the carrots, you can't really tell what's carrots out there, but I can see them. Anyway, they're growing really well, and I'm pleased with those. And now we'll go inside the fence there, and I'll show you what we got there. Okay, so this is inside my fenced area, and this is the area that I really need to get weeded. This is the area that actually makes a difference, because this is where the slugs can cause problems. But this, literally, the weeds in here have grown up in a week. It's crazy how when it's so hot and dry and then all of a sudden it cools off, how much grows. Anyway, I want to show you my zucchini. So I've already picked some zucchini. It looks like there's more zucchini in there. Oops, and I did not get that blossom off there. So you're supposed to, I understand, pick the blossoms off of these once they start growing. Otherwise you get blossom rot like that one. So we'll pick those off. Anyway, so there's zucchini there. The lettuce has finally started growing. And this, I think, was a butternut squash. And it's not producing any flowers, but boy, is it viney. So I won't plant that again. Anyway, butternut squash, more zucchini. There's a nice sized one, almost ready to pick there. Pop that blossom off that one. Whoops, that one wasn't ready. Well, we'll see if it grows. Anyway, zucchini and another butternut squash. The lettuce, and there's some slugs. And the slugs come because I have not kept my weeds down. And I actually did not cover the lettuce with eggshells because I didn't realize the slugs would eat them. My spinach has gone to seed, but I actually expected the spinach to go to seed. And I'm going to pull this all out now that it's gone to seed, and I'm going to replant it. There's plenty of time to plant it and get more spinach. But before I do, I'm going to pick off a bunch of the usable leaves still, because it's still good. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just not as tender as it used to be. Cabbage, this one has split, but it looks okay, but there's no slugs because I've been coating these with eggs. But they're growing great. And the radishes, this is the second planting of radishes, and they're about ready. I'm excited for those. I need to plant more, but they're growing now. And then the broccoli, there's some little heads. There's one in here, if I can find it. It's almost ready. This one right here I could probably pick. Maybe I'll do that today. And it's ready. There's one more down there. And then my peas. My peas were kind of like my carrots. When it was so hot and dry, they just did nothing. They just sat there. I thought, man, they're not even going to grow. And as soon as it cooled off, all of a sudden we have all these peas. And you can see they're flowering. They're super happy now because it's cooled off. So I'm excited for the peas as well. So today, while I'm out here, if you can hear me, I've been sick and it's not been fun. But I'm going to pick some spinach and probably make some spinach pasta. And I'll show you guys how I do that. And then I'm also going to pull some spinach out and plant some new spinach. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed that little garden tour. I hope that you're not too surprised at the weediness of my garden. It is what it is here at my house. Anyway, we get busy. But I hope you enjoyed the tour, and we'll look at this again here in a little while. Hey everyone, so today I thought I'd share with you one of the things that I like to do with spinach, is to kind of, I guess, preserve it. It's spinach pasta. So for this recipe, you're going to need some flour, eggs, spinach, obviously, and then the recipe book I'm using is just the KitchenAid that came with the attachments for my pasta maker. It does not have olive oil in it, but I like to add a little bit of olive oil. So instead of water, I'm going to add olive oil. And the spinach, it's pretty dry, but there's still a fair amount of water in it. So anyway, we'll have to probably adjust the flour and that kind of stuff. And then you're also going to need extra flour for when we get to rolling out the pasta. This recipe you're going to have to roll out using the KitchenAid, like the attachment. I'll show you that in a minute because it's going to be really, really stiff. If you don't have a pasta maker and you want to roll this out by hand, you probably need to add more liquid to make the dough softer and more rollable. So anyway, we're going to get started and I'll show you what we do. Okay, before we get started, just a note about the spinach. So this is the spinach that I picked out of my garden yesterday that you saw me. I've got to pull the spinach out and start over. To get it to this point, I took the spinach, I washed it, spun it in my salad spinner, I put it in my blender, and I pureed it with a little bit of water to get it to this point, and then I took it and put it in a kitchen towel and squoze out a lot of the water. It's still, you can see it's still slightly wet, but it's not as wet as it was, and you don't want it to be just like drenched and adding too much excess water. This might be too much now, but we'll just add more flour if we need to. But it's a great pasta because this is very, very fresh. If you were to want to use this later, you might blanch the spinach before you puree it, just to keep, you know, anything bad out of it. But anyway, blanch it and then puree it. You can do that with this too, either way. But for today, because it's fresh, I just blended it and squeeze out the water and that kind of stuff. So we're going to start with our recipe. Alright, we'll see if my dishwasher is too loud. I may have to voice over this part of it. So we're going to start by adding our flour, and you can do part wheat, but you don't want to do all wheat for this one. Flour. And then one thing I find interesting is this spinach one doesn't call for salt. A lot of the other recipes do, but I do like to add just a little bit of salt, not a ton, like half a teaspoon. And then we'll do our eggs. And right now we have the paddle, and we're going to leave the paddle on it just initially, and then we put the bread hook on for a few minutes as well. So you need both, or you can stir this by hand, but it does get really, really stiff, so stirring it by hand is going to be a little bit more difficult. Oh, there goes the straw. Okay. And then we're going to add our pureed spinach in. And it calls for a 10-ounce package of frozen, and I had about a cup of fresh puree, so I don't know how that rates, especially since you're going to squeeze out all the liquid, but something around there. And then turn it on and mix it. Alright, it's most of the way incorporated. I'm going to add a little bit of olive oil, just because I like the flavor. Not a lot though, about a tablespoon, because it doesn't actually call for olive oil. Okay, now you need to switch to your dough hook. I don't know why they have you start with one and switch, but anyway. This is soft. We may have to add a little bit more flour. Put our dough hook on. It helps if you put the bowl up. Now really quick, I'll just tell you, the dough hook, we're going to go about 2 minutes, so we'll just speed this part of the process up. Now this is a little bit softer than I want it to be, and it's kind of sticky. And I figured there was probably too much water, so I'm going to add a touch more flour and then keep kneading. That's pretty good. You don't want it too sticky if you're going to be rolling it with this machine because it can't be washed. The attachments cannot be washed, so you got to have it fairly dry. If you're rolling it out by hand, you can make it a little bit stickier because you're going to be adding flour, rolling pin, you want it to be soft. So anyway, we're going to see if we can get this attachment off. There we go. And we'll start the rolling out process. I got to get a little bit more set up here, so give me just a second. Okay, so for the next part of the process, we're going to use our flat attachment. And this is going to just roll everything into sheets. And this goes on the front of your KitchenAid if you have one. And if you don't, you can roll by hand. I'm not going to show you how to roll by hand. It helps if I get that screw out far enough. And there's a little divot over here to lock it into place. So just make sure you're locked into place. And then you have your dough. You're going to need a lot of extra flour. I don't know, it just seems like I use a lot of extra. I've already put a little bit on here, but I just basically keep my counter flour. You're gonna need it, trust me. So I'm gonna divide this into 8 pieces, and this is gonna make a fair amount of pasta. I guess it depends. My kids, it would not, I mean, this would be 2 meals worth maybe, but depending on you and your family, may or may not be. So I'm going to just move all those out of the way, except one, and I'm just going to smash it. You can get a rolling pin if you want to smash. I guess I am going to roll some of this by hand, but just smash it out pretty flat. Smash all of them. I guess I'll do them all first. Alright, so we're going to start on 1, and we're going to put the pasta in, we're going to pull it out, we're going to fold it, and do it again 2 or 3 times just until it seems like it's incorporated well. We'll do all of the pieces that way, and then we'll move our dial to 2, and then from there on to whatever width we want. I'm going to go to about 4 or 5, and then I'll show you my other attachment that I'm going to use for the Alfredo that I want to make. So, in the pasta maker, you cannot go above a 2. So on your KitchenAid, and it says that in the book, 2. Okay, now everything is rolled to a 1, and I'm going to change it to a 2. You can keep folding it on the 2, but you cannot fold it anymore past that. But I usually don't. I just usually now, I'm just going to start rolling thinner and thinner. Now we're going to go to the 3, and you'll notice I have a little bit too much water. I can tell because it's springing back a little bit, but that's okay because it will roll out very flat if we keep going. Okay, we're gonna go one more to the 4, and then keep going. Okay, we're going to change the head, and then we'll... Okay. Alright, so I've changed my attachment to my Alfredo, and you'll see it when it comes out how it cuts it. One thing I like to do before I cut the pasta is actually cut it shorter, cut these pieces shorter. This one's fairly short, but I'm still going to cut it in half. So I end up with 16 pieces. So I'll just do that really quick. Okay, so this requires more flour because you don't want it to stick together. So as you can see, this is a very floury process. So I'm going to cut these, and I'll show you. I kind of pile them in little nests as I go along, but fairly well coated in flour so that they don't stick together. Alright, so I'll show you what we got. Alright, so there is our pasta. Homemade. You can cook this right now in boiling water, and it takes about 5 to 6 minutes to cook. It's really fast. Or I like to put it in the freezer, like I would only use about half of this for my family, and then put it in the freezer, and it works great. I hope you enjoyed that recipe, and I hope you're growing some spinach of your own and trying some of these recipes along with me. Thanks.